I'm Charlotte from Charlotte So Natural here in Newton, Kansas, and I am here today with like a great idea. I wanted to start making this pattern because I have this jelly roll, and this is actually designed for the same fabric. It's got it pictured on the front. So I love it, but when I started looking at all these little square in a square pieces, well, I've been talking to you about making things and not losing the points, and I thought, these are little. This is 2.5 inch wide strip. I'm gonna match to that size. That's very little. I wanna try another method. This is the method that's in the pattern. They have you cutting a 2.5 inch square of the dark and then sewing 4 corners. And that's okay, but you know what? I have a feeling that I'm going to lose some points on that. There's a lot of trimming and stuff. So I came up with a little bit better method. I love paper piecing. This is very simple paper piecing. I'm using Carol Doak's foundation paper, which comes in 8.5 by 11 sheets. There's a lot of them in this package, so you just pull out a piece. It's a little bit like newsprint, but it actually tears cleaner. So I knew I needed to draw my own shape. So this is what I am looking for. I want to paper piece with that. So I just folded this, did my drawing on the top, and I used a ruler to do that. I just drew my 2.5 inch square, drew 1/4 inch away from each edge, drew a dot in the middle of each side, connected those dots, and there's my square in a square ready to go. I put the measurements here, and it's not that hard to do. So once I had that done, I took it to the sewing machine and I unthreaded my needle and I stitched through all of my drawn lines, and that perforates it all the way through so that now I have the lines on both sides of the paper. I have, in the ones that have been cut apart, they are just perforated. So you have the perforation on both sides. You just have the lines on two because you're just drawing the paper pattern on top of your stack of fabric, of papers, I'm sorry. So once I have those drawn, I cut out my pieces. I could just measure this, added my 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. I needed a 1 7/8 inch square, so I just cut strips of the dark and then cut squares of that. Now I take this dark, I put it on here, and that's centered, and so that's ready to go. So to get the triangles, again, I just cut a strip of the background fabric, and I use a triangle ruler just to cut squares. You could cut squares and cut them in half if you wanted to, but the reason I like doing this is because I end up with these blunt corners, and that is going to match the blunt edges of my paper. So I'm gonna lay that on right like that, and then I'm gonna flip it over. Now what's really neat about this perforated with the needle is that actually that gives a little bit of texture, and this doesn't really want to slip. It's just kind of holding on there. So once I have that on, I'm gonna flip it and stitch on the printed side. So I'm gonna take that over to the sewing machine, and you can do this with any basic sewing machine. So now I'm going to put that needle down and make sure I'm sorry, this is a school model that we are trying out, and let's see if I can get a better vision for you. So now I have that in there. I am going to shorten my stitch length, and again, I am not real sure about this little school sewing machine, but we are going to just sew right on that perforated line. In this case, because it's the first one, it's going to be on the drawn line, but that is going to be the sewing line. So once I have that done, we'll come over here and we'll look at these. So once I have that done, I add the other papers, the other sides to it. So the first one is here, and you can see I press it up. Then I add this one to that. Then I add the 2 outside edges. And you can see these are sewn perfectly on the line, on my perforated needle line, but they come off the edge of the paper. I have cut this paper as a little bit larger, but I have that perforated line that shows me where it's going to be trimmed. I'm still not going to count on that. I'm still going to go back and use a ruler, a 2.5 inch ruler. I'm gonna lay that on there. I'm gonna look at where these intersections are and make sure that I have my little template, my little ruler centered. I'm gonna cut that with a rotary cutter. And then I have all these perfect little squares ready to go be sewn between my strips. Now, one of the things that people, you can see they're the perfect size for my strips. One of the things that people say about paper piecing is they don't like to have to remove the paper. This is really easy to do. This hasn't been folded or anything. It's just been perforated once with the needle when I marked the lines and once when I sewed it. Remember, I shortened my stitch length a little bit, and now it just snaps off. So I'm going to just snap that off. And then I can just get the center square out like that. And that's really quick. Even if you didn't get these out, those are fine to get left into your quilt if you choose not to dig these out of the intersections, but it's really pretty easy to do because if you've ever picked up a wet newspaper, you know that's going to dissolve pretty easily. I also, living in Newton, we have the trains. So when I have a paper piecing project going, I just throw a bag of the ones that need the papers removed into the car. Then when the train comes, I'm very happy if it's a long train. So I hope you'll come see us in Newton. Historic downtown Newton is hot and windy today, but we're ready here with air conditioning inside. So come see us at Charlotte Sew Natural in Newton, Kansas. Thanks, Wisdom Wednesday.